Hello there and welcome. Today we're gonna look at the complete service that Omega offers for their watches. This video happened to come about because I bought a Speedmaster reduced and the chronograph didn't work. After speaking with the seller, he reimbursed me the amount of full service costs, and shortly thereafter I dropped the watch off at my local Omega boutique. The interesting thing is that this watch was serviced about 2 years ago and has not been worn much since. I wanted to take this opportunity to show you what Omega does when the watch has been serviced briefly before, what parts were replaced during each service, what the customer service was like, and much more. But let's start at the beginning, namely finding a place where the watch can be serviced. First, you need to know that the movement of the Speedmaster Reduced is an ETA 2890-2 with a Dubois 2020 chronograph module. That may sound simple, but the module is actually quite difficult to service. And that's why I didn't want to give the watch to any watchmaker that services Omega. The only real option for me was Omega, and fortunately they have a full price list for servicing. In case you're wondering why I said fortunately, it's not the first time that I've had a watch serviced, and other brands often require the watch to be sent to them for an estimate. As you can see, prices for a complete service vary depending on quartz or mechanical, chronograph or non-chronograph, and precious or non-precious material. In my case, with a non-precious mechanical chronograph, it cost me $750. There is also the option of getting a partial service for about $350 if you ask Omega, but that only includes replacing the pushers, crown, gaskets, a bit of polishing and a water resistance test. The movement is completely excluded, so it was not an option for me. When I arrived at the boutique, I told the saleswoman that I wanted to have the watch serviced because the chronograph wasn't working and it had been serviced a little over 2 years ago. She was very nice and asked me for the white card that you get after every service, because even if it was a little over 2 years ago, it shouldn't break and they would fix it for free. Unfortunately, I only had the bill for the service and it was in another country. I also told her that the bracelet is completely brushed, but to my knowledge, the center links should be polished. She explained to me that Omega knows what the watches originally looked like and that restoring them is not a problem, nor does it cost extra. After all that was cleared up, I happily handed over the watch, received a pickup slip, and was told it would take about 2 months. After about 2 months, the boutique called me and told me they didn't have the parts to fix my chronograph and that it would take longer than expected. I have many other watches, so I told them I was in no hurry. Well, after about another month, I called them and asked how much longer it would take. Since the salesman had no idea, they called the service center directly and told me that the parts had not arrived yet and it would probably take another month. 4.5 months after I gave Omega my watch, they called me and told me that it was finally ready for pickup. To be honest, I was a little annoyed that it took so long, and I didn't walk into the boutique with the happiest face, but I was excited to make my video. Upon pickup, I was pleasantly surprised, and that's rare for me in the watch world. Upon pickup, I had a small case with me to keep the watch safe, since I always wear one watch and it feels a bit strange to wear 2 pieces. To my surprise, Omega presented me with the watch in a nice leather case that reminds me a lot of the case in the box of the 2021 Speedmaster Professionals. I was given time to look at the watch and complain if anything wasn't to my satisfaction. Fortunately, everything was to my satisfaction, and Omega also restored the bracelet to its original condition. I got the white service card needed for the 2-year warranty, and the next part was again quite surprising. The seller apologized for the delay and gave me a signed letter of apology from the Swatch Group. The letter was accompanied by a small gift, one of those lovely Omega card cases. $750 later, I left the boutique and was on my way home to compare the 2 services. Let's talk about what parts Omega replaced with each service. To make this easier, I will show you all the parts here and name them. During the first service, the mainspring, the acrylic crystal, the pushers, the threads of the pushers, the hands, the spring bars, 2 bracelet pins, the crown, the clasp, 2 cogs, 2 screws, and the gasket of the case back were replaced. During the second service, the acrylic crystal, the pushers, the threads of the pushers, the crown, 2 bracelet pins, the hands, the spring bars, and the gasket of the case back were replaced. Cool, but what does that even tell us? First, the current service either did not include any parts of the defective chronograph they repaired, or it did not require any parts to be replaced. But since the chronograph is working now, I can't complain. I'm glad they looked at the bracelet pins during both services, because after a while, pins or screws tend to get stuck and are hard to remove without the right tools. They also replaced basic parts like gaskets, pushers, and the acrylic crystal during both services. These parts are always replaced, and it's better that way. You probably realized that the first service was much more extensive, at least from the parts we see here, and that's true. Even though the service price is a lump sum, Omega does what they feel is necessary to make the watch stand the test of time. This watch was sold in 1994 and it was first serviced 25 years later, so a lot needed to be done. After only 2 years, the mainspring and clasp are basically new, but I can understand the argument that the same thing should always be done for the same price. One thing I can't quite understand is why Omega didn't change the bezel on this watch. I know for a fact that the bezel can be changed, and you can spot abrasions and dents on it. In this case, the bezel did not fade nicely, so there is no real reason to leave it on, and aluminum bezels are made to be replaced. The only thing left to consider is the polish on the case and bracelet. This is a bit of a controversy for the watch community, as too much or a bad polish can ruin your watch. But in this case, I wanted to restore the bracelet, and the manufacturers usually do a great job. I won't comment on the polish too much, as you can see it for yourself, but I'm happy with it. The corners are sharp, the bracelet is back to its original condition, and yes, the small dent on the left side is still there, but that's to be expected. So, what is my opinion of Omega's service? While I can't disagree when someone tells me Omega could replace parts like the mainspring at every service, because why not? I have to say, I trust the knowledge of experienced watchmakers. I like the details like the carrying case, their knowledge of what the watch originally looked like, and the Swatch Group's apology for the delay, especially since it was unexpected. Could it have been cheaper than $750? Sure, but I wouldn't be so sure that the watch is as good as it can be as I am now. I've had watchmakers ruin my pieces by scratching them, polishing them, or not tightening the screws enough, so that I almost lost my GMT Master because of a bracelet screw. If it costs me a little more to avoid this, I'm happy to pay the extra. As a side note, be skeptical about all of this, because the parts I showed you before should be all they replaced, or usually they are, but they may have left out parts. Who would you trust to service your Speedmaster? Your local jeweler or Omega? I would always pay a little more and go to the manufacturer, but maybe you can prove me wrong. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if it wasn't your cup of tea, tell me why in the comments down below.